Hey everyone, this is Tori Beth Black with Garnet Report, and we're here at Williams-Brice Stadium to talk a little bit about Gamecock sports. And I have with me Rickson Lane. 2 weeks ago, USC beat Vanderbilt in a pretty interesting game, but it ended up that the main topic of conversation was not actually about the game itself. Rickson authored an article entitled USC's Student Section is an Embarrassment on Garnet Report a couple of weeks ago, and that article got a lot of traffic. Rickson, what do you feel about what you wrote in that article in USC's Student Section during the game?
I mean, I think what I wrote was basically true. I wrote it kind of, sarcastically, but there was a point behind that. It was kind of drive interest towards the story. And I stand by everything I wrote because it was embarrassing to see USC students leaving in the middle of what turned out to be a really, really close conference game.
All right, and in the article you wrote that Clemson wipes the floor with USC, talking about the Clemson student section versus the USC student section. Do you still agree with that comment? I know it got a lot of traffic.
As of right now, yeah, I do. I've been to Death Valley to watch Clemson play, and there's both very, loud student sections, but at the end of the game, Clemson students are usually still around, and South Carolina's, unfortunately, in the past few years, they've left early.
All right, you also mentioned that two of the players after the game, Connor Shaw and Mike Davis, both mentioned the fact that there weren't very many students in the student section after the game and that they had noticed it during the game. How do you feel about the fact that our own players are noticing this?
I think the players are just frustrated. I think Connor Shaw has been around for 4 years and he's tired of seeing it. And Mike Davis has only been here 2 years, but even he noticed it. So I think Connor and Mike were just fed up and decided to say something, and I applaud them for doing it. I think it needed to be said.
All right, speaking of Connor Shaw, he has had one of arguably the best seasons that he's ever performed as our starting quarterback. But it seems like every time something happens with the Gamecocks or something wrong goes on, people are quick to blame Connor Shaw. How do you feel about that, and how do you think he's handling that?
I think that South Carolina fans they don't quite appreciate Connor Shaw, maybe because he's not as flashy as other quarterbacks. He doesn't put up a lot of yards, but he wins football games for South Carolina. I think it also hurts Connor Shaw just because Dylan Thompson's a very likable guy. His backup, Dylan's performed very well when he's been in the game, and so I think that kind of goes against Connor. But at the end of the day, Connor's the unquestioned starter on the team, and he's performed incredibly well this year.
All right, and let's talk a little bit about defense. In the past few years, USC has had a great defense, and we've seen a lot from them. And I think that most people expected to see that this year, but we've been disappointed. How do you feel about the defense's performance so far, and what do they need to do to finally step up?
I think they performed about as well as could have been expected. They're very young, and the linebackers in the secondary. They shut down a really good North Carolina team. They played a Georgia team that was desperate for a win and just outperformed South Carolina. And last week against Vanderbilt, or 2 weeks ago rather, they played really well. They got put in some bad situations, but overall, I think they've played about as well as they could be expected this year.
All right, and finally, UCF. It's going to be a big weekend for the Gamecocks, especially coming out of a bye week. What do you think what do you think is going to happen, especially coming out of a bye week? What do you think they need to do, and what are your predictions for the game?
Well, it's funny. I know a lot of fans were kind of upset that South Carolina had a bye week between Vanderbilt and Central Florida and felt like it was kind of a waste, but I really think this is the best week of the year for South Carolina to have a week off. They just got done with a Vanderbilt game that was really close at the end, and they kind of made a lot of mental mistakes in that game. So I think this is a good week for South Carolina just to get their mentality back and to prepare for a trip to Orlando against a really good Central Florida team. They just beat Penn State in Happy Valley, in front of 100,000 fans, and Central Florida can beat South Carolina. They've got a really good quarterback in Blake Bortles, who's performed really well this season. I think that if South Carolina's not mentally prepared to go into Orlando and play to the best of their ability, they can lose this game to Central Florida. But ultimately, I think South Carolina is too talented. I don't think Central Florida has enough playmakers to win that game. I think the Gamecocks win, but I think it's going to be a really, really close game this weekend.
All right, well, we're interested to see what happens. That's all we have for you this week. I'm Tori Beth Black with Garnet Report, and make sure to check out GarnetReport.com to see Rickson's article about the student section and all of your coverage about Gamecock sports.